Here is a Goldstar branded dehumidifier. This is the Goldstar DH4010E dehumidifier. This is a model I've been looking for quite some time. This is the model of dehumidifier that we had in the first house that we lived in the 2000s. We moved in there in the early 2000s. We had this dehumidifier in the basement, and we had a computer room in the basement. And I wasn't particularly interested in dehumidifiers at the time, but I had a typing class when I was in middle school, and I used to use that computer in there, which was a big white tower computer with a big white CRT monitor. I used to use that computer to do my homework for my typing class. We had a little book that we would type different things from. I actually think I have that book somewhere still. We had to type from the book and then print it out and bring it in. And so I would do my typing homework on that computer. I don't really remember using the computer much outside of that. It was a gateway computer, and it ran Windows XP. And I remember that weird like cow cube logo that gateway had. I remember that vividly. When you first turn it on, it would come with that weird cow cube right after the CRT initialized. So that was kind of cool. But when I would do my homework in there, I would turn the dehumidifier off, and sometimes I would empty it if it was full. So I remember the bucket pretty vividly, and the dials. So I actually came across two units like this earlier this year, over the last maybe 2 years. Both of them were the electronics controls model, which I suspect are internally identical, and actually this one also is electronically controlled. The only difference is that it has what looks like a mechanical control set. And the two that I found, one of them, the refrigeration system was spoiled, but the control board worked, and the other, the control board worked, but the refrigeration system was spoiled. Did I say that correctly? One of them, the refrigeration system worked, but the control was spoiled, and the other, the control worked, but the refrigeration system was spoiled. So between... Oh man, this is really confusing me. I have a hard time with things like that. Sometimes they get inverted. I'm going to try this again. One of them had a working control panel, but a busted refrigeration system, and the other one had a working refrigeration system, but a busted control panel. Okay, that was correct. And so between the two, I'll end up being able to make a good one out of the two, and have one of each of these versions, which is kind of cool. One of the digital controls one, and then one of this mechanical electronic controls one. So this surfaced out of the blue at the OK Will, and it was pretty expensive. It cost $32.99, which is normally way more than I pay for something, but since this was a unit I was looking for in particular, it's in excellent cosmetic condition, and it had the box, I felt like it was worth those $33. Now, I don't know exactly when we bought it, because that house, the basement was finished off during the time that we lived there. So I don't know if the unit was purchased at the time we moved in, or purchased at the time the basement was finished. I suspect that it was the latter, and that's important because that machine was not in service for very long. I don't think that it even came to the next house. If it did, it wasn't used for any period of time that I can recall. Because because I was always in the basement at the old location. When we moved in, I never remembered this being there, and I would have remembered it. So it's a Korean built unit, so it really should in theory be of decent quality, but it just doesn't seem like it. As I remember, that one that we had didn't last very long. I don't think it lasted more than 5 years. And then the other two that I found both had problems. So I don't know. I'll be very curious to see if this works or not. If it doesn't work, I'll probably take this front cover and stick it on the one that has the good refrigeration system, because I bet the controls are probably even modular and can just be plugged in. Or if it's just a leak, I'll get it, patch it up and recharge it. So yeah, I don't know, not very good quality. And it's interesting because it seems like this problem of dehumidifiers being particularly cheap goes back a lot further than I thought. And nowadays, if you buy a dehumidifier, it's just a complete and total piece of garbage. Way worse than any other refrigerant type of equipment. Like, you can still buy a halfway decent air conditioner to an extent. You can still buy a halfway decent refrigerator, but you cannot buy a halfway decent dehumidifier. And apparently that's been a problem for a long time. I would say it's been a problem since probably the very late 90s is when the last decent ones were made. With exception, they had the Oasis ones that were made through the 2000s were still pretty good. So this is what the box looks like. It's a little dirty. I haven't cleaned this up at all yet. I haven't even used it. It does power on, but I don't know. I didn't check it past that. So this is the box. Show all the sides here. Is there a manual in here? It does have some of the original packaging still. It's got the plastic bag and the styrofoam. But I don't think so that the instruction manual is present. No, there's a bag on the bottom that the instruction manual would have gone in, probably. And it's empty. So there's no manual, but having the box I think is really cool. I have a thing with boxes. I like to have the boxes for stuff. So it is a Good Housekeeping Promises, whatever that is. I wonder if that was something like maybe Consumer Reports back in the day. Oh boy, Energy Star, which usually just means the thing's a piece of garbage. So this is tested by the old standard, so it would have been tested at 86 degrees with, I think, 80% humidity, which is a totally unrealistic use case. And that's another very strange thing, is that the modern standard for dehumidifiers was dropped down to 65 degrees, I think at 60 or 65% humidity. And that is such a realistic use case. It's very strange to see a testing spec actually match a typical use case. It's too bad the quality of the machines has gone down so much that it doesn't even matter how they're tested anymore. 2 fan speeds. I'm sure the fan speeds are so similar it makes no difference. 21 pints bucket, which is a good size. The dehumidifiers made today have a bucket about a third of that, if you're lucky. So it had a 1-year warranty on parts and labor, and 5 years on the compressor. But I guess the compressor replacement would not be covered to labor, so you'd still have to pay something, I imagine. So now we have a selection guide, which it's got some Chinglish in there, but these numbers to me are totally ridiculous. This thing claims that if your space is moderately damp, which is not defined, and you have a 1,500 square foot area, you only need an 18 pints per day machine. That's like nothing, especially by the old standard. Extremely wet, laundry drying, wet floor, high load conditions. I think it should say laundry not drying. That's what it usually says. In that case, it would claim for a 1,500 square foot area that you would only need a 30 pints machine. Now I'm just noticing what's kind of funny is that nowhere in here does it even list a 40 pints machine. I think that those numbers are way too low. I know in this house, in the 500 square foot garage, I'm trying to, what did I use in there last year? I think I used the 40 pints, and it really wasn't enough. I had to use 2 sometimes. And so according to this, for a 500 square foot room, I need a 10 pint if it's only moderately damp. Space feels damp and has musty odor. I mean, if it feels damp, that's most basements, they feel damp. Very damp would be damp spots showing on the walls and floors. I mean, that's like I wouldn't consider that very damp. I consider it a serious problem. Floors, sweat, and seepage is present is wet. And it says only put a 14 pint? No, that's crazy. That's not going to do a daggone thing. Well, anyway, so that to me is just totally ridiculous. And that's bizarre because usually you would think that the bigger models would have been worked up because they want to sell a more expensive unit. I don't know. That's strange. So there it is, made in Korea, which is usually decent quality manufacturing. Those 2 sides are the same. And then this, it's got the same, is this the same as the other side? Yeah, the box it's only got 2 different sides. So this was sold at, it looks like Kohl's in New York. It's kind of interesting how it made it down here. I mean, not that New York is that far away, but I wonder where else it was sold. That's not the store that I would have thought that it came from. I thought that was a clothing store. So anyways, that's the box and some of the backstory. I don't really vividly remember what this sounded like. I mean, the machine, it wasn't of particular interest to me at the time, and you know, it's been well over a decade since I've seen it. Almost 2 decades now. So, but I'm sure once I turn it on, I might remember the sound. I do remember that it was pretty loud, and the output was very hot. So it probably has a stinking rotary compressor, which I think these things should just never have been fitted with because they just run too hot. Should not be inside of plastic. Oh, this is metal, but I think some of the rotary air conditioners were okay, but as soon as rotaries got into dehumidifiers, it just seemed like almost every dehumidifier fitted with a rotary was junk. So, despite being in excellent cosmetic condition, it's very, very high hours, and I'm really concerned it's not going to work because it seems like a lot of times when dehumidifiers show up at the OK Will, it's just a means of people discarding them because most of the transfer stations and dumps around here charge a pretty hefty price to get rid of one of these, like 20-30 bucks, and you're not supposed to put these in the regular trash. So it really makes you wonder, what is the incentive for people to actually dispose of these things properly? So a lot of times they just get donated to a thrift store to get rid of it, and then some unfortunate person ends up with a useless piece of junk. It did come with the filter, which is pretty clean, but the coil is filthy, so that's kind of weird. And here's the bucket. I remember this texture on there, and I remember pouring it out this hole into the kitchen sink and being impressed by how, you know, it drips one at a time in there, and it was able to fill up the whole bucket. And here's the informations on the inside. Six amps, that's kind of a lot of power for a stinking rotary thing. Only 5 ounces of 22. I was hoping there would be a date on here somewhere, but I don't see it. I might be able to find a date code somewhere on the inside. Or perhaps the serial number can be decoded to produce the date. I don't know how to do that decoding if you can. Looks like the automatic shutoff is working. Or at least the apparatus in the bucket is working. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on. And we're going to be testing at 119 the volts. I remember it. I remember the sound of that fan. Pulling 5.16 amps. And it's going down to 5.1 amps, which is not a good sign. We want to see the power go up, not down. That compressor sounds like it hasn't run in a long time. Well, I'll let it sit for a while, but it's kind of behaving like there's no gas in there. I don't hear it, and the power consumption is not budging. The power consumption of the compressor should be going up if it's building head pressure. Let's see if the coil's getting cold at all. No. it's not getting cold. Well, that's probably why it was discarded. Probably lost the charge. Well, I'll come back in like 10 minutes and we'll see if it's charged up at all. I don't think so. Let it run for about 15 minutes. I just came back downstairs and it was off. Within a couple seconds it clicked back on. I suspect it went off on defrost. Curiously, now I hear a lot of refrigerant. And it's 5.56. That's a lot more than it was before. I hear a lot of gas in there now. Now it is only 67 degrees down here, so I would expect it to ice up. It's so dry in the house. It's 28% down here. It's not going to pull much moisture anyways. There's definitely some gas in there. If it's enough for it to work properly or not, I don't know. But it definitely has some charge. Oh, this is getting cold now with no ice. That's interesting. Actually, it's almost cold all the way through. Yeah, it's cold up to the top now. Interesting. So I guess this is another one of those cases of an extremely slow charging system. Which seems to be the case with rotary as they age. Yeah, the output's pretty warm now. At the bottom we've got... oh, it's got to be more than that. 44 is the lowest I saw, and at the top it is 50, 47, 44, 43. It's hard to get this right on where it needs to be. 44. So it's working. Yeah, it's cold all the way through. Interesting. Nice. The return line is actually cold. Huh, I think we've got a good one here. That's very surprising to me. Yeah, it's going back cold. Interesting. Okay, I think we've got a working unit. It certainly sounds a lot better now. It still doesn't sound nice. It sounds like a junky rotary compressor, but it's kind of what it is. It sounds correct now, unlike it was before. Yeah, and the output's pretty hot, just like I remember it. Yeah, the fan is actually moderately quiet in this thing. It's a shame the compressor is so dang loud. I can see why I shut this off when I was doing my typing homework. This would definitely annoy me. Well, that's very interesting. I really did not have a lot of expectation for this to work. No ice, and it's cold all the way through, top to bottom. It's going back cold. Unreal. Alright, that's cool. A little bit of moisture forming on the top rung. This is definitely got gas in there, and I actually think it has all the gas it's supposed to. I just remembered that at some point, I don't think this was too long after we got it, the one that we had at in the 2000s, it used to drip like rusted water out the bottom. I remember that was a problem because my mother had like custom painted the floor in there, and it was staining the floor, and so towards the end of its time, it was put on I think it was like a piece of wallpaper or something to prevent the drips from getting on the floor. Let's see if it'll restart. No, it's pulling 0.01 amps or 0.9 watts all the time for these dumb electronics controls. Looks like that's the humidistat sensor. I figured it wouldn't start the compressor right away, but I would expect the fan to start at least. Yeah, I can hear the gas. The compressor sounds like it's under load and the power draw went up, so I think we got a full charge in there. All 5 ounces of it or whatever it was. Well, that's a nice surprise. It's not pulling any moisture, but I wouldn't expect it to. It's only 20-something% humidity. Well, that's nice. So it just needs a good cleaning, and it should be ready for use. This is plastic. I think it's styrofoam on the other one. I'll put this back here for now just so we don't lose it. Well, that's a pleasant surprise. I really did not expect this to work, but it looks like this is working. This whole case is getting warm. Pretty hot coming out. I don't know. I just don't feel like rotary compressors should have been used in these things. Which I don't understand why they run so hot in this case, because the head pressure should be so low. I mean, you got the output from the evaporator feeding into the condenser. That it shouldn't be a high head pressure situation, but yet the output is so high. I don't know, something about the efficiency is wrong. In theory, if it was 100% efficient, the output should be ambient temperature, you know, minus whatever heat, or plus whatever heat is generated from the motor. And this is a lot of heat coming out of there. And 88 degrees output and it's 68 going in. It's a high rise, and it's only been running for a few minutes still. Well, whatever, that's just the way it is. It works. And it's pretty cool to see and hear this again. Nothing like the nostalgia of finding something like this that you remember from years ago and been looking for a while. That fan motor probably needs to be oiled. It might be running kind of slow. No, actually, it's not running. It's not running slow at all. It might be ball bearing. In fact, it looks like it's a. It looks like it's an impeller, like a vacuum impeller. It doesn't even look like a regular fan. I gotta get a flashlight to take a look in there. I'm curious now. I'll just use this light that I have here. This portable clip light with an incandescent bulb. Yeah, it's like a vacuum impeller. That's interesting. I was not expecting that. I'm surprised it's so quiet being like that. Okay, so I guess inside this is not the same as the digital controls one. The one with the digital controls is it's got a regular fan. And it's definitely ball bearing. It's gliding real easy. I wonder if it's got a might be a stupid little C-frame shaded pole motor. Yeah, it definitely is ball bearing. Oh man, the incandescent bulb just burned out. I don't think that went off on defrost. No, that definitely did not go off on defrost. So that is going to be our problem. I bet that's why this was discarded. It doesn't seem to run for an extended period of time. I bet that was the problem. Now, granted it is only 26% humidity down here, but I feel like that would be almost continuous run. I don't know. But that could potentially be the problem. Maybe the humidistat fell from where it's supposed to be, or it's defective now and busted up, it's not working, I don't know. But I still feel like this was discarded because it wasn't working properly, and maybe this is what the previous owner was experiencing, this short operation cycles. Well, we'll have to test it again in the summer, because you know, to say it cuts off too soon when it's 26% humidity, that's, you know, it doesn't really, that's not a valid test case. You know, we'll test it again in the summer when it's 75% humidity, and then if it still cuts off, then we know we've got a problem. But the refrigeration system definitely works. Well, I don't know what the heck that was about. Maybe it's safe to say we have faulty electronics controls. The electronics controls did fail in one of the other two that I had. I mean, I could see that, you know, the short cycle, but the fan acting like that, I could not see. Unless maybe that was the humidistat. You know, it called and didn't call, called, didn't call, and it's like right in the threshold. I don't know. I think we gotta wait and check it again in higher humidity conditions. But I think it's possible that there's something wrong with the electronics controls. The good thing is that if there is something wrong with electronics controls, I don't see any reason why we couldn't replace that with a 2-speed switch and that with a mechanical thermostat and get a good working unit.